Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP, we've got Nick here in attendance with me, and we're going to be once again going through our weekly recap of the WWE. So we're going to be starting off with Monday Night Raw, going into Friday Night SmackDown, but in the meanwhile, going into NXT just before we get there as well. So Raw, NXT, SmackDown, throughout the week, let's catch up on all the events that happened in WWE this week. So, starting with Monday Night Raw, and continuing to push towards the Money in the Bank PLE that we got coming up as of recording next weekend. So we had some qualifiers still to go through. You know, not all the fields completely set and ready just yet. So we've got a couple of spaces just to figure out who's going to be going into those Money in the Bank ladder matches. So with the women's division, we're going to talk about that one first. We had Lyra Valkyria, who would be going up against Kairi Sane and Shayna Baszler. And Lyra Valkyria, since coming up to the main roster, she's had a very, very good start. She had a great entrance into her main roster career, and she continues to do that. She continues to show that form, that momentum, and to keep it rolling throughout, because she would defeat both Kairi Sane and Shayna Baszler, and she would qualify for the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. And it would be just a case of Lyra Valkyria continuing this momentum. She's been on it since coming up. I think Triple H clearly sees a lot in her, a lot of promise. She's very talented. I think naturally the fans are starting to, welcome her in properly. You know, with a theme song when they're participating. We saw that a lot at NXT. Now she's on the main roster. They're doing that as well. I think she's just a likable character. I think that's basically what she's got in spades, and she continues to impress. The crowd and the higher ups in WWE clearly, because she's getting win after win after win, being put into many different opportunities. She was in the Queen of the Ring final. Now she's in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Yeah, the opportunities are rolling for Lyra Valkyria here, and it's great to see that, honestly. Not only that, but we also had a men's Money in the Bank ladder match qualifier, and that would be Chad Gable. He came back from the dead, taking on Braun Strowman as well as Bronson Reed. And this would be quite the interesting dynamic, because last week we saw Chad Gable being taken out by the Wyatt Six on their debut, the magnificent debut that it was. But he would somehow be here. He'd be cleared to wrestle. He'd be cleared to compete. It's a bit of a weird one, a bit of a confusing one. And obviously, you would have some stiff competition here. You know, massive men, Bronson Reed, Braun Strowman. That's a lot of meat, a lot of muscle, a lot of, there's a lot to go through, to be fair. But yeah, Chad Gable thrown into the mix, and it wouldn't go without its interferences in between here, because Braun Strowman's had a large thing with the Judgment Day as of recently, and they would make their mark in this one as well. Throughout the mid stages of the match, they would show up. They would distract Braun Strowman. He'd go out to ringside. They'd have a little bit of a skirmish, and then that would be Braun Strowman sort of dealt with by the numbers of the Judgment Day. That would leave Chad Gable and Bronson Reed in the ring. Chad Gable would hit the moonsault, and he would pick up the 1-2-3 to qualify for Money in the Bank. So to be fair, he died last week on Raw, but he's now back alive again, and he's in the Money in the Bank ladder match, which is, very, very impressive as far as I'm concerned for Chad Gable. But Nick, what were your thoughts on these two Money in the Bank ladder match qualifiers? Do you think these were the right winners on this occasion? Are you hyped to see Lyra and Chad in those respective ladder matches? What do they bring to those contests?
Yeah, I think Lyra continues to impress, and while I personally didn't think she would get this kind of push, she certainly has, and I don't see any issues with it to this point. Honestly, I wasn't sure who's going to come out of the women's side. I feel like all three would have been worthy competitors, but with Io in there, probably not Kairi, but certainly Shayna deserved a spot as well. But so far, the theme for both sides kind of seems like younger talent and kind of talent that needs a good push. And I think that's what Money in the Bank should be. I'm sure we've talked about this already before, but I feel like everyone that's won the spot so far kind of fits that bill. And for the men's side, yeah, we had Drew McIntyre come back from quitting, which was, the surprise of the century. But then for Gable to come back after what the state we saw him in just a week later, it's a head scratcher. I can't think of anything else to call that. It's just I don't want to say it kind of takes away some of the debut effect, but it kind of does. To see him in that state and to come back a week later and clear to wrestle, mind you, and then as you mentioned, taking on these two huge superstars and Braun and Bronson, and beat them. That's, I mean, I guess Gable's going to continue getting the push, but it's a bit of a weird one. At the very least, I think they maybe could have pushed this one off to the next week. So he's gone at least 2 weeks. But overall, I'm happy with the winners. So I won't complain too much on that.
Yeah, I'd agree too. No complaints really from me. It's just, yeah, like you said, head scratcher regarding Gable and the Wyatt 6 debut and everything that happened regarding that. So, moving on now then into other sort of situations that happened throughout the night. Just off the back of that Chad Gable Money in the Bank ladder match qualifier, and we would have an odd situation with Abby the Witch, Nikki Cross, whatever we're going to be calling her. She would make her presence felt. The lights would dim. She'd appear in the ring amongst all the smoke. And Chad Gable, obviously, you know, he suffered that injury last week, whatever you want to call it, the attack, the assault, whatnot. He's clearly not in the right mindset for this, is he? Realistically, he's clearly sort of like a bit anxious. You saw all his entrance to the Money in the Bank ladder match qualifier. He was like looking over his shoulder. You know, it wasn't particularly 100%, not there mentally, but yeah. He clearly wanted absolutely none of Abby the Witch. Would just flee the ring, leave her to herself, and Abby, quickly as anything, would just go over to Michael Cole. And she'd have this, like, package, parcel, whatever. She'd pass it to Michael Cole. She'd put it on the commentary desk, and, you know, she'd leave it with Michael. She'd walk off into the crowd and wander off. And Michael Cole would basically just open it up. He would reveal a VHS tape, which would say, "Play Me" on it. And then he would pass it along to the production team, who would then play it later on in the night. Other segments that we had as well, Drew McIntyre did actually open up Monday Night Raw, and he was basically declaring his interest in participating in the Money in the Bank ladder match. He showcased the bracelet that he took off of CM Punk after attacking him on SmackDown last week. That bracelet would have AJ and Larry. Larry is CM Punk's dog, AJ being CM Punk's wife, on the actual bracelet itself. So, you know, quite a personal item, something that, you know, Drew McIntyre is going to use as leverage in this big feud that they've been having for some time now. And later on in the night, Drew would be told by Adam Pearce that, no, he isn't going to just be put into the Money in the Bank ladder match. He has to actually qualify. So he's going to have a qualifying match next week on Raw. As of recording, that'll be tomorrow night. And that'll be against both Sheamus and Ilya Dragunov. So absolutely huge matchup there announced for next week. Drew McIntyre, you know, continuing to sort of like be in that sort of spotlight on Raw. You know, what are the bigger pictures going on here? What are the bigger stories with CM Punk as well? And yeah, he has to qualify like everybody else does, which is, you know, pretty fair as far as I'm concerned. And then also we had a match between Bron Breakker and Ludwig Kaiser. And in this matchup, it was quite, it's been a very samey sort of vibe for the last few weeks. I mean, I'm really enjoying it. Not gonna lie, this isn't a criticism in any sense. It's just, when you see either Braun or Ludwig and Sheamus, or Sheamus and Braun, the other one's going to get involved, right? And that's exactly what happened here. Bron Breakker and Ludwig were going at it. They were having a decent matchup. Ludwig was pretty competitive against Bron Breakker for the majority. And then it got to a point where they were on the outside. Braun was up against the steel steps. And Ludwig was trying to run over towards him, you know, with that malicious sort of attack that he does on the steel steps to his opponents. And Sheamus would come out of nowhere, hit him with a big knee, and that would obviously be disqualification. So Ludwig Kaiser would technically defeat Bron Breakker by DQ, but I mean, it doesn't really feel like that, does it? Bron would not settle for that, though. He would give a big spear to Sheamus, and yeah, you know, he's fed up. He's tired. He's annoyed that people keep interfering in his matches. He's never really had that sort of like clear run since coming up onto the main roster. There's always been someone there to interfere and put their nose in his business. And that's exactly what's going on here with this Intercontinental Championship picture, with Ludwig, with Sheamus. There's a lot of elements here that, you know, that are coming into the you know, the bigger picture here, really. Later on in the night, Bron Breakker will be backstage complaining to Adam Pearce. Sami Zayn would show up and would essentially just say, you know what, if you want a shot at this Intercontinental Championship, all you got to do is ask. And he's like, you know what, give him the match. Let's go. Let's have it at Money in the Bank. Adam Pearce, straight up as you like, would announce this official there and then. Sami Zayn vs. Bron Breakker announced for Money in the Bank. I don't think there's a slide for a segment that I'd like to talk about. No, there's not. Just on the back of also the whole Wyatt Six stuff, we did also see a sort of like a interview. It was with Uncle Howdy. He was interviewing Bo Dallas, and it was a really fascinating interview because it was basically just a chance to hear a bit more about Bo Dallas and like why he's on this sort of mindset with the Wyatt Six. And he was asked some pretty personal questions, such as like about the loss of his brother, how it affected him, what he felt, and as other like featured quotes from the build-up of the QR codes to the Wyatt Six debut. But yeah, great understanding for Bo Dallas into why he's sort of like in this situation, and it sort of like makes me think, you know what, in the future weeks we're probably going to get more of these with the other members as well. But regarding everything that I've just spoken about here, quite a lot just gone on about. What are your thoughts on every single thing that's happened here? The eeriness of the Wyatt Six stuff with the VHS, you know, and then obviously the interview that followed, the carnage of Ludwig, Sheamus, and Braun, and then also Drew McIntyre. You know, it's just the personal vendetta he has.
Yeah, it seems like every time we think that the feud between Drew and Punk can't get any more personal, it does, and a rarity in that Drew finally feels like he has the upper hand. Sure, it won't last long, and then with his qualifier match next week against Ludwig and Sheamus, you'd like to think that Drew would probably come out on top from that if CM Punk, you know, doesn't make his return. I don't know that that's a guarantee because we saw Chad Gable come back a week later. But we shall see. I think it's quite obvious that Sheamus and Ludwig will probably take each other out in that qualifier and kind of leave Drew. He would definitely will be the outlier in terms of the other participants in the men's side feeling like the one person that doesn't really need a push. But probably good to have at least one, you know, extremely established guy in Drew and former champion. So we'll see where that goes. I think Drew will be the winner there. And the Intercontinental scene is, you know, it's hard pressed to find a better scene. It just jumped right from the Alpha Academy story, and now Sammy having to deal with Ludwig, Sheamus, and Braun Breaker. That's surely they're going to get involved with their match at Money in the Bank, but Braun and Sammy should be a great match. Looking forward to that one. The Wyatt Six stuff, yeah, the interview itself didn't have anything on WWE's page in terms of photos, but the interview itself was great, and I think that's probably the path they'll go down, is just have each member interviewed weekly. I think it's a great way to kind of continue to slow burn, kind of how they did with Bray Wyatt and that story. So I think that's probably what they'll do, is maybe have a different VHS each week. But yeah, it's certainly a nice follow up, and I think that kind of draws out and kind of gets us more familiar with each character. I'd be okay with those for a long while. But yeah, all good segments here.
What I'm really hoping for here, just off the back of that Wyatt Six moment there, basically, like, we had Abby coming into the ring, right? Nikki Cross. I'd love to see sort of like the other characters. I'm hoping this isn't a role that's exclusive to Abby or Nikki. I'm hoping that we actually get to see the other guys, maybe like, I don't know, like doing things in their own way, maybe like passing on tapes or whatever, you know, like showcasing some new footage of like the interviews. Maybe sort of like they can all set up each other type thing. So we've had that Abby towards Bo situation already. Maybe we get like I don't know, like a Rambling Rabbit type situation, Eric Rowan, to that of Mercy the Buzzard, you know, Dexter Loomis. That could be a cool thing as well. So like getting a chance to see each and every single one of these guys being all creepy and weird on Raw, but then also passing it along to one of their other members of the Wyatt Six with the interview as well. That would be quite cool to see, rather than just like one set person doing it all. I don't know if maybe like that's the route they're going to go down, but it'd be great to see them all, you know, participating in this in their own like weird and odd way. But in terms of the Wyatt Six stuff, basically all we need to say regarding that, there were still things that happened throughout the night on Monday Night Raw. We had a women's tag team match, which featured the tag team champions, Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, the Unholy Union. They would be going up against the team of Katana Chance and Caden Carter. And it would be a win for Unholy Union. They'd get the job done in a few minutes. It wasn't like the longest match you'll see on Raw, but it was good enough to sort of like get them in the mix. Their first matchup since winning the tag team titles back in Glasgow, Scotland, at Clash of the Castle. And yeah, just a chance to sort of like get them back on TV and like see what's going down with them. And the picture will be made pretty clear soon after the matchup because Damage Control, Io Sky, Dakota Kai, Kairi Sane, they would come out and they would launch a brutal assault on the tag team champions. So it seems pretty clear that's the that's the vision for the future regarding the women's tag team titles. Lizzo's going to be Damage Control up against Unholy Union. Then also other moments, we had Seth Rollins and Damian Priest. It was originally a Damian Priest promo here. So he came out to the ring and he would have a few words to say basically about Seth Rollins. He'd basically go on to say that, he's looking forward to defending the title and stuff. Like he's going to prove himself. Seth Rollins would quickly interrupt him, and he would claim that Priest wouldn't be champ if it wasn't for Judgment Day and CM Punk. Seth would basically give Priest an ultimatum a couple of moments later for their match at Money in the Bank, and he would basically say how, look, if he loses, he'll never challenge for Priest's world title again. Big odds there against Seth Rollins. But then he also said, look, if you lose Priest, you're out of the Judgment Day. So quite a big ultimatum there. A lot of odds on a lot of stipulations on the line there. Priest didn't really seem too phased by it. He took a couple of moments to have a little bit of a think, and then he sort of like laughed it off. He basically ended up saying something along the lines of Judgment Day needs him more than he needs Judgment Day. So immediately just sort of like push him to the side. Yeah, I don't know. Like, if you're members of the Judgment Day and you're essentially your leader, if that's what we're calling him, says that about you guys, then you're not gonna be too happy about it, are you? Realistically, so quite a bold statement there from Damian Priest. But it wouldn't end there though. This little segment, because Gunther would shortly come out after Seth and Damian would accept the terms between the two of them, and he would basically say how excited he is for this match because, after all, the winner of it is essentially going to become the lesser man to him at SummerSlam. So, yeah, painting the picture there for a world title opportunity down the line. Gunther, the king of the ring, getting his title shot at SummerSlam. Who's it going to be? Would be Seth or Damian? So that's up to us to find out at Money in the Bank. Other moments, we had Karrion Kross defeating Kofi Kingston. That wouldn't be without its distractions. It's the final testament. That's essentially what they do. They get the distractions to get the win. And that's exactly what happened here. The match will be going along. Paul Ellering, he'd appear on the Titantron, and AOP would be delivering an absolute beatdown to Xavier Woods backstage. Kofi, he's distracted by that, gets blindsided by Cross, and then Karrion picks up the 1-2-3 moments later. In our main event for Monday Night Raw, we then had the World Tag Team Championship on the line, and Finn Balor and JD McDonough. This match would actually be set up earlier in the night by Liv Morgan. So Liv had quite the involvement on Monday Night Raw. She would appear earlier on. She'd have a promo in the ring. I think that was interrupted by Zelina Vega. And Zelina would essentially challenge Liv Morgan to a match. Liv would laugh it off, basically not being too serious about it. Zelina claiming that Liv had forgotten about the women's world title. Liv would completely just, say no to that. That's not true. But it clearly struck a nerve with Liv Morgan because, she had the attention of Zelina Vega and she was literally right in her face. Liv was just waiting for Dom. She showered him with gifts. She wanted to know if Dom liked the gifts and stuff, was demanding that Dom would come out, but it was actually Zelina Vega. Eventually, Dom would come out after Zelina requested the match. And then it'd be moments later where they would just spark up into a brawl. Liv against Zelina, just absolutely beating each other down in the ring. Rey Mysterio would come on down to break it up. Yeah, it'd be a little bit of a shove from Dom onto Rey. And then, everyone would go their separate ways. But later on in the night, you'd see Liv Morgan. She would be in the face of R-Truth, who basically just be asking for a title match for the Judgment Day. So JD and Finn Balor. It's interesting. She's trying to get into the good books of Judgment Day. It's, if you read between the lines, there seems to be perhaps some sort of like extra element in here that maybe we're missing at the moment. But yeah, Liv is really trying to get into the good books, and that would happen in the main event as well. So not only would she set up the match between JD and Awesome Truth for the World Tag Team titles, she would actually get involved as well. She'd be on the apron, she'd distract R-Truth, she'd have like a full-on conversation with him on the apron, and eventually that would open up for Judgment Day to pick up the victory and to become the new World Tag Team champions. Personally, I'm happy with that call. I don't mind R-Truth and Miz dropping those championships. I feel like their run was basically at an end anyway. I'm happy to see other people, as the tag champs now. And basically, we can go from there. JD McDonough, Finn Balor. I think JD's been killing it since being on Raw, to be honest, with the role that he's been given. And this is just like giving him his flowers there. And obviously, Finn Balor back in with another title, another tag team title. But yeah, what do you think of all of these segments here? Seth and Damien picked up another level there with obviously those stipulations. Damage Control back in the title picture. Karrion Kross putting Kofi to bed. And then obviously New World Tag Team Champs. What did you think?
Yeah, I think Damage Control, maybe this is their second attempt at trying to get them right. And they certainly appeared often tonight. And I think that's the right call. I think with the members of Damage Control, it only makes sense that they should be a force to be reckoned with. So I'm happy with that. And I think Damage Control versus Alba would be could provide some great matches down the line. So I certainly have no complaints there with the Unholy Union. And Damian Priest and Seth, it'll be interesting to see yet another wrinkle in the bloodline while they got gold tonight. Damian basically termed them useless right in front of everyone. So it's felt like they, how many times have we thought that, oh, this is probably the end, or this person's leaving, and I think Damien's always kind of been the lead topic of conversation. No, he's gonna leave here soon, and after this episode, it feels like maybe Damien is going to leave, and maybe Liv will take his place. But Liv's kind of doing, and this is kind of a reoccurring theme we've seen with Judgment Day, and that when someone wants to get in with the Judgment Day, kind of the same way JD did it, kind of the same way R-Truth did it, they just are, constantly trying to get in their business until they're accepted. And R-Truth really was never, but JD is kind of how it worked. Prove your worth, and I feel like that's what Liv's kind of doing here, which is great. I feel like she's essentially trying to take Rhea's spot. And the longer she's away, I think the more likely that probably is to happen. So it'll be interesting to see in a couple of months what the Judgment Day looks like. And then the Karrion Kross bit, I don't have too much to add to that. I think it's I'm not entirely sure where they're going. It felt like they were trying to pick up one of the members of the New Day, and now it's just kind of like it feels like maybe run on a bit too long. So we'll see where they go with that one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, things are starting to sort of like open up now. We're starting to really sort of like get the dynamics going forward between, a lot of different scenarios now. But I think with the World Tag Team titles, especially interested to see where that does go, because the Judgment Day story has really started to like take a new turn in my opinion, with the whole could Damien be leaving, whether you think that's going to happen or not. It's a very big, question mark that sort of like hangs over the Judgment Day. So yeah, like you said, very interesting to see where it goes from there. Judgment Day, as far as I'm concerned, is actually getting a little bit more interesting again now, which at one point was pretty damn stale. So yeah, nice to see that they sort of like mix things up a little bit, and hopefully can keep our attention going forward a bit longer as well. So, close. NXT, our second show of the week, we'll be discussing here and now. And again, lots of stuff to go through here in this one. So just a couple of things to go through first then. We would kick off the night with a tag team turmoil match. And basically the winners of this one would go to NXT Heatwave in order to challenge Axiom and Nathan Fraser for the NXT Tag Team Championships. We would start off the match with, I believe it was New Catch Republic and Idris Inoue and Malik Blade. New Catch Republic would defeat Inoue and Blake. Then we would get the OC coming in straight afterwards, and New Catch Republic would pretty quickly deal with them. Legado del Fantasma would come in sooner rather than later. Again, New Catch Republic is taking care of them as well. And then Chase U would come on down as the last team, and they would pick up the win by defeating New Catch Republic. So they would a tag team title match at NXT Heatwave up against Axiom and Nathan Fraser. And the Chase U story is starting to pick up again, I feel. It went through a bit of a lull for quite some time, bit of confusion with the whole JC Jane saga. And the money situations as well were a little bit weird and odd. But then we've got back now into the sort of like cohesive Chase U. We've got Ridge Holland in the mix. He's maybe adding another dimension to Chase U's antics, Chase U's vision. And he's offering maybe like an escape route for certain situations here. But in this match, didn't really seem to be that way. He was just sort of there. His general presence, that was more than enough, I suppose, really. Chase, you just pick up the victory there. But yeah, securing a tag team title opportunity at NXT Heatwave. We'd also have a segment which sort of like filters into the top right here. Ethan Page would come out and he would start a promo in the ring. He states that he defeated a number one contender for the NXT title and was never eliminated from the Battle Royal. So, you know, he's telling truth. He's not telling a lie there whatsoever. Ethan Page was called for Ava to show up and to insert him into the match instead of Javon Evans. Ava would begrudgingly agree with Page, basically saying that, you know, she doesn't want to agree, but she kind of has to. But while she was doing that, it would be Sean Spears who would then arrive onto the scene. Spears would say that he beat Javon Evans first, so that he should be given an opportunity as well. So, you know, a couple of different elements in here trying to get a match with Trick Williams. And, you know, you say his name, he appears. He would come on down shortly afterwards. Trick Williams would show he doesn't really care who his opponent's going to be at Heatwave. He'll just take on anybody. But whilst he was sort of like saying that, he would then get jumped quickly by Ethan Page and Sean Spears. Javon Evans would charge down to the ring to make the save, and the two would deal with both Page and Spears, send them packing outside the ring. Match set up later tonight would be Sean Spears and Trick Williams. That'll be the main event. More on that a little bit later on. Then, other sections that we had Wesley. He would go one-on-one with Joe Coffey. You know, we've seen them be in the North American Championship picture recently. There was actually a triple threat between Wesley, Obafemi, and Joe Coffey pretty recently. Wesley, we saw last week that he would challenge Obafemi to a North American Championship match. Obafemi would agree under the stipulation that it would be his first and only one-on-one contest for the North American title whilst Obafemi is champion. So therefore, if Wesley loses, he can't challenge again whilst Obafemi is the current North American champion. So Wesley, he would defeat Joe Coffey. Obafemi would appear on the Crow's Nest shortly after the match finished, and he would basically just grant Wesley his match officially for NXT Heatwave. So, yeah, I mean, you know, we all pretty much saw that coming anyway, but Wesley, he gets that shot at the North American Championship. Can he get the title back that he lost, you know, a long time ago to Dominic Mysterio, and he never really got that opportunity to win back afterwards. Then, into another segment here, we had the NXT Heritage Cup on the line. Tony D'Angelo, the current champion, he would go up against Nathan Frazer, and he would successfully defeat Nathan Frazer. Frazer would actually pick up the first fall here, getting it quickly in the first round, but then D'Angelo would rally. He'd get back into the swing of things. He hit a spine buster to get an equalizer in, and then he hit another spine buster later on in the matchup towards the latter rounds, and that would be enough to get the 1-2-3 to successfully defend the NXT Heritage Cup Championship. So these four segments here, building towards NXT Heatwave in quite a big way, maybe minus the D'Angelo Heritage Cup matchup. The main event picture for the NXT Championship, I've sort of felt has been a little bit odd in recent weeks. Maybe this is starting to clear things up a little bit here between these four men. Perhaps that could be the way. What are you making of this whole story at the moment, Nick? Because I don't know, I've not been a massive fan recently, but this seems to be a little bit more interesting in my perspective. And then when you've got the two title matches set up for Heatwave, you've got Wesley against Obafemi, Chase U against Nathan Frazer and Axiom. How excited are you for those matches? Are you looking forward to seeing Wesley back in that singles North American Championship picture? Because he absolutely killed it when he was the champion beforehand. What are your thoughts on all of these?
Yeah, I kind of felt like New Catch Republic. It was a shame that you know, it's kind of how they tend to do these turmoil matches, or gauntlet matches as they call them on Raw, and main roster. It seems like there's always one team that goes through everyone and then loses the very last one. I feel like New Catch would have been a better matchup for the NXT tag team titles, but definitely an interesting development there, having Ridge Holland kind of the callback to Butch, Pete Dunne now. So I think that'll simply provide some easy stories going forward. I think we kind of talked about it last week with the main event picture. I think all four of these guys will eventually end up being in it. I guess I won't talk too much about that until later with the main event, but I feel like it's clear that they're all going to be involved in some sort. I just wasn't sure which capacity, and I think that kind of gets shed a little more light on later. Yeah, and as I mentioned last week, I think Wesley is going to take the title from Oba. I think Oba certainly exceeded my expectations with his title run, but I think it is time to move on. Yeah, and in the Heritage Cup match, I do feel like, we've had, I think, 2 or 3 of these, I think, over the last month or two. I personally don't feel like it's adding a ton to it. I guess they're just title defenses at this point. But I feel like those have kind of gone stale for me. Maybe I'm in the minority there. But yeah, I just didn't feel like that one did a lot for me personally. But all the other segments here, I felt like are doing a nice job of moving forward and developing.
Yeah, I think the picture's definitely starting to become a bit clearer now as to where they're actually headed, especially that NXT Championship thing, because I legit had no idea what was going on beforehand. Javon Evans against Trick Williams, really wasn't keen on the dynamic of that one, but this seems to be, maybe picking up a little bit more now. I'll maybe talk about a little bit more about that in a little bit. There were other segments here on NXT that we still haven't spoken about, and let's start off with Lola Vice and Roxanne Perez. So Roxanne would have a match with Karen Petrovic. That would be set up earlier in the night via a backstage sort of conversation that they would have in the locker room. Roxanne Perez would successfully defeat Karen Petrovic, and then after the match, this would be where it sort of like picks up, because Roxy would attempt another spinning back fist on Lola Vice, which is what we saw last week, laying her out in the middle of the ring. But this time Lola would be a bit more aware of it, and she'd actually catch and block the back fist. Lola would then hit the 305 to send Perez crashing to the mat. Vice would actually take the women's championship. She'd walk off with it. She'd go backstage. She'd pop it on Ava's desk. She'd hand it to Ava, whatever you want to say, and she would demand the title match with Roxanne Perez at NXT Heatwave. Ava would later on the night let Roxy know what had happened. Roxy obviously absolutely furious with the situation, but at the end of the day, Ava's the GM. She would grant Lola Vice the NXT Women's Championship match, and another title match set for NXT Heatwave. But these two, they've seemed to have been building towards this in the last few weeks, and finally we do have that clear indication that they're going to have the match at Heatwave. Then another match that we saw on the night, Tavion Heights. He would be scouted out by Charlie Dempsey, especially in recent weeks. He would want Tavion to join the No Quarter Catch crew. But in order to do that, he had to prove himself. He had to actually win a match up against one of the current members of the QCC, and he would go one-on-one with Damon Kemp, providing that if he won, he would then be joining the faction. And that's exactly what Tavion Heights would do. He'd win a pretty competitive match between the two of them. This Tavion Heights guy looks extremely impressive. I'm not going to lie. He's powerful. He's agile. He's just a great presence in the ring. He's one of those guys that I think maybe we've been sleeping on for a little while. I think he's got a lot of talent, a lot of potential. And from what I saw of him in this matchup, one-on-one opportunity on NXT television, I thought he impressed very thoroughly, in my opinion. I don't know what you think, Nick, but I really liked what I saw from Tavion. And he, after winning the matchup, is now a member of the No Quarter Catch crew. Then in another segment here, we had a number one contenders match for the Women's North American Championship. We'd have Sol Ruka going one-on-one with Ariana Grace. It would be Sol Ruka that would actually pick up the win here up against Ariana. She'd become the new number one contender for the Women's North American Championship, dispatching with Ariana Grace, as you'd probably expect her to do so. But this dynamic's quite weird. You've got friends here going after the championship. You've got people two women who are both considered to be faces. It's it's quite the interesting dynamic. You wouldn't normally have face against face, friend against friend, going for a title for a championship. But this is exactly what the case is going to be at NXT Heatwave. And both these women quite talented. You've got Guy Jordan being the first ever women's North American champion. Sol Ruka, probably one of the favorites going into that matchup that we had recently at Battleground. I think with these two, I personally have no idea what's going to happen in that matchup, but it's nice to see, they're trying something different. They're not going for the status quo. It's, something a little bit out out of the ordinary. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this one. It could be quite interesting. Not sure how the match is going to go down, but it's definitely got to be interesting to sort of like see for myself what exactly it is going to happen from that one. But yeah, looking forward to the match. It should be a lot of fun to watch between these two, very impressive women. Then in our main event, we had Shawn Spears. He'd go one-on-one with Trick Williams. And this would not be without its little bit of controversy, a little bit of confusion, and distractions for sure, because Shawn Spears would actually defeat Trick Williams. But there's a very big asterisk over that. It would be Brooke Jensen who would actually get involved with this one. He would attempt to get into the ring at some point towards the end of the matchup. He'd actually get held back by security. He'd then sort of like force his way through once again. He'd grab the hood of the commentary table, and he'd inadvertently hit Trick Williams over the head with it. That would allow Shawn Spears to pick up the win moments later. And then post-match, Ava would be seen backstage talking to both Stevie Turner and Robert Stone. And she would declare that the NXT title match at NXT Heatwave would be a fatal four-way, which I'm pretty sure we were all starting to realize that was the direction this was heading. But it's nice to see that confirmed for definite now. All four of these men are very competitive over each other. Trick taking a loss on NXT, that's quite something as well, considering obviously he's the NXT champion. But Brooke Jensen, where does he come into this? I think that's going to be something interesting going forward, because Trick's not going to let this go. He's probably going to want some comeuppance for Brooke Jensen, maybe get his hands on him himself in the next few weeks, whatever. I don't know. But yeah, a very, very interesting title picture. I'm now interested again. Let's go. I'm happy about that one. But yeah, regarding these four segments then, what were your initial thoughts on all of these? Going into Heatwave, this is very much building towards all of those. And then, yeah, what do you think of Tavion Heights?
Yeah, there's some interesting dynamics here. As you mentioned, the face-face dynamic for the North American women's title. I feel like you kind of have the same thing going on with Lola Vice and Roxanne Perez. Thank goodness they weren't going to stay on the same team, because I'm not sure anyone on the roster, I think, as I kind of alluded to last week, would be able to overcome that. And I kept thinking Lola was going to, drop the title back to the ring kind of as walking off, but she didn't. So I think she makes a great heel. I'm not completely sold on her in-ring work quite yet, but she's clearly in for a big push. And after beating Shayna as well, I think it's inevitable she's going to take that title. It's just a matter of when. Personally, I thought that the Sol Ruca bit was maybe a bit, in the picture there, you kind of see maybe a bit hinting at maybe a heel turn. I personally don't have any issues when they do the heel or face dynamic. But from that picture alone, it kind of felt like maybe that's where they're going with that. I could be wrong, but I think she could be a good heel. And well, I guess we'll see. But I think that both of the women's matches there set for Heatwave will be high quality, and the main event picture being, I think, as you mentioned, kind of what we thought, and I think it makes sense. And I was probably surprised as anyone that Shawn Spears was actually able to pick up the win there over the NXT champion. So yeah, NXT Heatwave is looking pretty good.
I'm excited for Heatwave. There's some really good matches on the card, and yeah, it's shaping up to be like quite a heavy hitting contest as well between every single person on there. There's a lot of personal vendettas going along. There's some really interesting title pictures. Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to it. It should be a thoroughly enjoyable watch. Hopefully, it's going to be a bit more enjoyable than what we saw at Battleground. The matches weren't exactly bad. It's just with that crowd, it just felt a little bit lull. But we'll return into an arena, so it should be a more of a normal feeling to it this time. Okay, so how about we go on to Friday Night SmackDown then, our third show of the week. And plenty of shenanigans and stuff going along here on Friday night. Excuse me. Sorry. So we would have a load of situations going down. Money in the Bank qualifiers still to be determined. And let's talk about those right now. So firstly, we'll start with the women's side of things. We had Tiffany Stratton going up against Candice LeRae and Jade Cargill. The winner of that one will qualify for Money in the Bank, and it'll be Tiffany Stratton who would successfully get the job done. We see during the matchup, Nia Jax would make her way down to the ring, only for Bianca Belair to join her literally right behind her, actually. As she was making the way down, Bianca was right there. Nia would attempt to interfere, trying to cost Jade Cargill. Belair would put a stop to her being able to actually, interfere herself. But that would only open up a window for Indy Hartwell to appear out of nowhere and to actually shove Jade Cargill into the ring post. That would nullify her for the remainder, basically allowing Tiffany Stratton and Candice LeRae to finish up the matchup. Tiffany would hit the prettiest moonsault on Candice LeRae to pick up the victory, and the Money in the Bank ladder match. Maybe it's Tiffy time after all, but I think she'll be a great inclusion in the contest. Tiff is very, very good when it comes to those sort of matches. I think she's going to add a great part to it, and maybe even be one of the top favorites to actually win the Money in the Bank ladder match as well. Going off of that, on the same sort of thing there, though, we also had Naomi going up against Indy Hartwell and Blair Davenport. So Naomi would pick up the win here, and it would basically be part 2 of the first match. Obviously, Indy Hartwell, she interfered in the first contest, costing Jade Cargill. Let's swap those roles around here a second, because as the match was going along, Jade Cargill would show up to cost Indy Hartwell, shoving her into the ring post as well. That would open up a window for Naomi to get the victory, rolling up Indy to get the 1-2-3 and securing her place in the women's Money in the Bank ladder match as well. No real surprises there, in my opinion. Expected those two women to win those matches, but both are great inclusions to be in that contest. We also had another one, which was the men's division this time. We had LA Knight, we had Logan Paul, we had Santos Escobar, all vying for a place in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Logan and LA, they've had this very big thing recently. LA's been trying his best to really get to Logan Paul, to actually try and just get him in the ring one-on-one. He wants the US title. But this is another opportunity. This is actually for a chance to get the Money in the Bank contract. If you win this, you go into the ladder match. So some big opportunities for LA Knight as well as Logan Paul and Santos Escobar. This wouldn't be just the 3 men involved, though. No, there'd be a couple of other oddities in here as well. So with Logan Paul's entrance to the ring, he would actually bring out Tyrese Halliburton of the Indiana Pacers. And that would be to a chorus of boos around the New York crowd. For those of you who are into basketball, you're probably fully aware of what the hell is going on there. As a Brit who doesn't really know too much about it, I'm not really too sure, but can kind of guess from basically the general dynamic of the situation. He wouldn't be the only one present, though, because member of the New York Knicks, I'm going to try and pronounce this, I'm going to go with Jalen Brunson. Not sure if I'm saying that correctly. He was sat at ringside for the match and was able to put a stop to Tyrese passing brass knuckles to Logan Paul. That'll be sort of like towards the later stages of the contest. Logan would demand those brass knuckles. Tyrese would try, but it'd actually be Brunson who would get in the way and just like put a stop to it, distracting Tyrese in the process. Logan would try and capitalize, though. He'd try and go for a roll-up. LA Knight would reverse it, and he would actually get a reverse roll-up win to cement himself into the Money in the Bank ladder match. So LA Knight qualifying for the 2nd year in a row. He was narrowly beaten by Damian Priest last year. Can he get it this year? I'm not sure if Logan Paul is going to allow him to do so, but yeah, it's a cool inclusion in the matchup. LA Knight was over as hell last year. He's still over now. I reckon the crowd are going to go crazy on that one as well. Really wanting him to get the win, but that Money in the Bank ladder match is building up quite nicely here. You got 5 men as things stand at the moment who don't have a single world title between them. I like that because you're building a new star. That might not be the case when the 6th match comes along, but for the majority here, I'm liking the inclusions. So what do you think of these winners, Nick? Are you happy with all of these 3? Do you think they all deserve to be in those matches? Do you think anybody else should have gone through instead? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, you did a great job with the NBA references. Typical WWE bringing a rival, and Indiana Pacers aren't a rival so much as other teams, but that wound is particularly fresh because the Indiana Pacers knocked out the New York Knicks in the playoffs this year. So that was a very fresh wound. Kudos to WWE for capitalizing on that. I'm not the biggest NBA fan myself. I'm more of a college basketball guy personally. But yeah, that was a nice little, Logan Paul likes to bring in the celebrities, so it worked out nicely and got a good pop from the crowd. LA Knight and the local Knicks favorite MVP candidate. So Yeah, that I don't think Logan Paul needs it. I think he's just as good by himself, but it certainly helps add that extra bit of heat. I think LA Knight winning where there was the right call. I do feel like that kind of written on the wall there that Logan Paul is going to come back to haunt LA Knight in his Money in the Bank ladder match. But we'll see where that goes. Yeah, again, another great addition to the men's side. As I mentioned, I feel like 100 times already, Money in the Bank should kind of establish and help raise a new star. And I feel like all of these help them get their first taste in gold. And I feel like all of these superstars are more than qualifiers and capable of handling a title. With that being said, I think Tiffany again fits the bill for the women's side. There's not a single competitor in the men's or women's side to this point that I would be disappointed in winning and cashing in and getting their first taste of gold. And then we move on to Naomi. I personally don't feel like that was the right decision. I don't think she needs it, but I get why they did it because her kind of style kind of matches the Money in the Bank kind of style of the matches. So I understand. I just don't think she needed it. I think Indy would have been a better choice there. But Indy kind of we all saw the writing on the wall. Indy cost Jade earlier, and then Indy happened to be in a match. We kind of knew that was going, and so I guess by default that's why Naomi was the choice. I'm just not the biggest Naomi fan, but maybe she'll provide a spot or two. Hopefully, it's not taking the opportunity from someone else though.
Yeah, I see what you mean regarding Naomi, to be fair. I think there is a little bit of part to that. Maybe she doesn't actually need it, but I think, she's had sort of like a weird booking since coming back into the WWE scene. So I don't know. I'm just sort of happy to see her in the bigger pictures again. But yeah, it would have been awesome to see someone like maybe like an Indy Hartwell or Blair Davenport literally on her first match qualifying. That would be crazy. But it would have been cool to see maybe someone a little bit different as well. But yeah, I mean, I tried to do my research. I tried to do a little bit into the whole NBA influence there on that matchup, and I tried to understand. But you know a bit more about it than I do. But that makes a lot of sense, with the playoff defeat there. So that explains why it was such a loud chorus of boos. So yeah, I think I'm with you on that one now. But yeah, I had no idea at first. I was like, who are these guys? Anyway, we had a very, very large picture that went through from the very start of the night to the very end of the night. And that featured none other than the Bloodline, of course, right? And the Bloodline, they have been at ends with Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and as of recently, Cody Rhodes. At the start of the night, the Bloodline would show up. They would walk down to the ring. On their way, though, they would immediately be followed by an arriving Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and Cody, who did I say? Sorry. They'd be followed by an arriving Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton. That would spark an absolute brawl between all six men. They would go all across the arena. There'd be Kevin Owens flying off parts of the crowd onto a table, swanton to Tama Tonga, I think it was. There would be brawls into the ring on the outside of the ring. It would be crazy. Eventually, security trying to split the team of the faces up from the Bloodline, and they would actually fight off the security members. It wouldn't be ending there though, because there would be an ad break. After the ads would finish, NYPD members would be coming on down to basically just escort Kevin, Cody, and Randy out of the building, out of the arena, out of the building, all of it. So they'd be gone for the rest of the night. They would reluctantly go out as well. They wouldn't really want to, but they'd have to do so. Anyway, they'd be escorted out. Job done. Then, later on in the night, we would have the Bloodline acknowledgement ceremony, and that would basically be all about acknowledging the new head of the table, the new tribal chief, the new head honcho at the top of the Bloodline. But before we got to that point, Heyman would start off on the mic. He would quickly be stopped by Solo Sikoa. He would then introduce Jacob Fatu after earlier on in the night having told Paul Heyman that he wasn't here. He wasn't around. So Solo had lied to Paul Heyman, which, in the recent weeks, we know that Solo isn't quite favorable towards Paul Heyman as Roman Reigns was. You know, there's a very big difference in the dynamic now. It's completely shifted. We've now got Jacob Fatu in the scene. He had his entrance. Honestly, brilliant entrance. Love the theme. Love the sort of like the whole style of it. Love the pyro. Everything was great. So, you know, made him look like a big star when he came down to the ring. And then Solo Sikoa would demand acknowledgement from all members in the ring. So Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, Jacob Fatu, Paul Heyman. The aforementioned three, so the actual bloodline members that Solo had introduced here, they would all acknowledge Solo Sikoa. Jacob Fatu doing a wonderful job, by the way, may I just say that. Then Solo would ask for acknowledgement from Paul Heyman. This is where things would get a little bit out of the ordinary. Paul Heyman started to say that, you know, I acknowledge. He took a bit of a break, took a bit of a breather. He looked very tired, like he hadn't slept, you know, not properly shaven. Just you know, credit to Paul Heyman, like, you know, doing an absolutely wonderful job in this story at the moment. But he would then go on to say, I acknowledge that you are not my tribal chief. The crowd went crazy. They absolutely, you know, they roared for this particular moment. They were loud. And they cheered the fact that Paul Heyman, you know, stood up and said, no, you're not the tribal chief, not in my book. Unfortunately, though, the rest of the bloodline didn't appreciate that. So Sikoa and, you know, his band of thugs, they would essentially just decimate Paul Heyman. They take him out. Jacob Fatu would hit a splash from the top rope. And then the three of them really would go for a powerbomb onto Paul Heyman and pop him through the announce table. You know, Paul Heyman's like in his late 50s and he's taken a big spot like this. I mean, you got to give him credit for all the work he's put into this bloodline story, just his sort of like general demeanor. He's doing a wonderful, wonderful job, and he's continuing to like put his body on the line for it and to really like put his name out there. And he's just been taken out. So I think we might maybe have a few weeks now where we don't see Paul Heyman. It's probably going to be a while, actually. Maybe scratch that few weeks. It might be maybe like a month or so, maybe a couple of months at most, whatever. But this makes for a very, very, very big moment coming up in the future. Maybe a returning Roman Reigns, maybe a returning Jimmy Uso, Paul Heyman. You know, we can get some very big entities coming into this later on. But this Bloodline story is really fascinating. This is just the next twist and turn of the whole saga. And now it looks like it's just the Bloodline. Solo, Jacob, Tama and Tonga, all sort of like going at it for themselves here as like a brand new, you know, group of four, essentially. Now that the wise man's gone, he's been dealt with. I guess we see what happens from here on. But what are you thinking of the current Bloodline story? Are you fascinated by it? Are you really looking forward to seeing what happens next? How did you rate everything that happened on this evening? And what did you make of that brutal beatdown on Paul Heyman?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, and I think the reason the story still works, obviously, you have the new members being introduced, but seemingly felt like on at least a monthly basis, sometimes a little quicker. I think it's the importance of Paul Heyman and just the way he contributes to this. Like the way his eyes were red, it was impressive in itself, and like kind of wondering how he was able to do that. That was just makeup, or there was some extra you know, effect that he used to make it look like that. But you're exactly right. You know, not shaven, and then kind of, you know, looking tired like that just made the entire segment more impactful. But yeah, him taking a bump like that, you know, the guys, you know, they felt bad for even having to do that. But Paul Heyman, being professional, understands the impact that it makes on the story, and you know, going through with that. But props to him. Can't have felt good. But yeah, I think you're right. Hopefully we don't see Paul Heyman back next week. I'll Chad Gable's comeuppance there. But yeah, how do you bring him back? I think, as you kind of mentioned, I think the only way he can come back is if he has Roman Reigns on his side. And I think a lot of people are kind of, you know, maybe they know more than I do, but I think a lot of people are kind of wanting to see that bloodline be bloodline storyline. How far down the line, I don't know. Maybe Survivor Series. Timing would work out somewhat well if we could push that off to then, or maybe at Mania, Roman v. Rock again kind of thing. Who knows? I think certainly tons of speculation out there on that. As for the Randy, Kevin Owens, Cody Rhodes against the Bloodline, that one's a bit tricky, I think, in that I don't know, that Bloodline beating those three guys, is a tall task. But if they can do that right, maybe, firmly helping and establish the Bloodline, I think. But is that possible? Clearly we have that match at Money in the Bank now. Bloodline has to win, right? They have to win to help further establish, and then kind of what would be the next step for them. As you mentioned, if Paul Heyman is out for a month and maybe comes back with Roman at that point, what do we do with the Bloodline until then? Are we just running through random roster members, or is Solo getting his shot with Cody and kind of going through that till SummerSlam maybe? Maybe Roman coming back at SummerSlam, costing Solo, and then kind of continuing that segment there. But nonetheless, clearly tons of possibilities here and a great story being told. Again, kudos to Paul. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. He's still here for a reason. Just made SmackDown all the better. It was really the only story being told tonight in terms of long term. And it's another week of it being greatly done. So no complaints from me.
Yeah, you got to give flowers to Paul Heyman, right? He's just absolutely killing it all the damn time. He's so good at what he does, right? There's no one really better at it than him. He's just phenomenal. He's a great asset to the company. On the mic, he's brilliant. Storyline, he's wonderful. He really puts in the effort. I got to give him credit. He's just an absolute asset to have around. But yeah, the Bloodline story, certainly fascinating. Really looking forward to seeing where we go from here. Let's hope that they sort of keep the intensity up, because I'm loving every single moment of it so far, really. So that is basically the recap done for the week, guys. We went through Monday Night Raw, we went through NXT, we went through Friday Night SmackDown, and a lot of big pictures coming up here towards Money in the Bank, towards NXT Heatwave. They're coming up next weekend. So yeah, there's a lot to really go through, and it's fascinating to see where everything's leading to. Loads of big title opportunities, personal vendettas coming up here as well. It's exciting times for sure. But yeah, looking forward to seeing how they all come to a close, or even get extended, whatever. Those big pictures coming up very, very soon. But hey, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you to Nick for joining me today as well. Just before we do go, anything you'd like to add on, Nick, before we do close this one out?
Yeah, no, I think we got a go-home week, and we have a full week in Toronto for Money in the Bank and Heatwave. So it'll be exciting to see who those last members for the Money in the Bank matches are. And then if we can get any more matches announced for Heatwave, should be a fun week of wrestling.
And a Canadian crowd as well. That they're probably going to bring some energy, some heat. They're going to be loud, which is always good to see as well. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. If you liked what we are putting out here, then please leave a like on this video. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you've got anything to say, maybe you got some things that you think we've maybe missed, or maybe you want to expand on what we've already said, please let us know in the comments below as well. But we will see you guys in the next video. We'll be back soon. This has been another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much.